No, that's my tree. I got my doors
Or
on.
Brian, yeah.
It's a nice 65-degree day, and I got everything opened up so I can enjoy the elements out in my man cave. All righty. Let's get this thing going here. No, that's my tree. I got my doors
Or
on.
Brian, yeah.
It's a nice 65-degree day, and I got. Oh, I'm hearing myself. I don't want to hear myself. Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome to Sticks and Steps. My name is Brian. I am an alcoholic. I want to first thank all of you who've logged on to our Zoom meeting, and welcome to those of you watching on our private Facebook page, Sticks and Steps. Although this is an official, we welcome all people, regardless of whether or not they identify as an alcoholic. It is a open meeting of AA. We ask that you respect the privacy of those in attendance, and remember, whatever you hear here, let it stay here. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problems and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for AA membership is the desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I know that there's nobody here for their first AA meeting, and I do believe that we have a couple people celebrating birthdays with us this week. So if you are celebrating a birthday with us this week, feel free to unmute yourself and let us know your name and your years, and we will celebrate you.
Well, my name is Tim, and I am an alcoholic. I got 13 today.
Woo-hoo!
Hi, I'm Anita. I'm alcoholic, and I celebrated 23 on the 13th, past Saturday.
We won't subject you to any singing around here because last time I checked, we weren't on America's Top 40. But happy birthday to both of you. That is a huge accomplishment. Congratulations. I don't think anybody here is taking chips today. We are going to just continue to move on here. We do some readings here. We've got chapter 5. If somebody would like to volunteer to read how it works, I will post it up here on the screen.
I'll read. My name is Anita. I'm alcoholic. Chapter 5, how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. Thank you. You're muted.
Thank you, Anita. We're also going to read the 12 traditions. We'll post those if we can get somebody to volunteer to read those.
I'm Dorothy, I'm an alcoholic. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on AA unity. 2, for a group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God, as he may express himself in a group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous, except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And 12, anonymity is a spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Thank you, Dorothy. And our last reading of the day is going to be our daily reflection. Let me get it up here. If somebody would like to volunteer to read the daily reflection.
My name's Tim. I am an alcoholic. Mysterious ways. Out of every season or grief of suffering, when the hand of God seemed heavy or even unjust, now lessons for living were learned. New resources of courage were uncovered. And that finally, inescapability, the conviction came from God, does move in a mysterious way his wonders to perform. From the 12 and 12, page 105. After losing my career, family, and health, I remained unconvinced that my way of the life needed a second look. My drinking and other drug use were killing me, but I had never met a recovering person or an AA member. I thought I was destined to die alone, and that I deserved it. At the peak of my despair, my infant son became critically ill with a rare disease. Doctors' efforts to help him proved useless. I redoubled my efforts to block my feelings, but now the alcohol, had stopped working. I was left staring into God's eyes, begging for help. My introduction to AA came within days through an odd series of coincidences, and I have remained sober ever since. My son lived, and his disease is in remission. The entire episode convinced me of my powerless and the unmanageability of my life. Today, my son and I thank God for his intervention. That was tough.
Thanks, Tim.
Well, I suck.
All righty. So the format of this meeting is as follows. We begin with our on-staff cigar aficionado, Richard S. from Colorado Springs, who will share his stick of the day and his experience, strength, and smoke. After that, this is a workshop. We worked the 12 steps, 12 traditions, and 12 concepts of service in order, one meeting at a time. Today, we're on step 5. We're going to read step 5 out of the 12 and 12 together, and then I will share with you some homework that I was given on step 5. And then we will open up the meeting for sharing on step 5 or anything else that you need to share about. And so without any further ado, let's go to Richard in Colorado Springs.
Hello, everyone. My name is Richard. I'm an alcoholic. Happen to be a cigar smoker. Brian, Tim, myself enjoy it. So this is our little divergence. So the Monte Cristo Open Eagle. So this size is often referred to as, could be called a Toro. It could be called a double Robusto because of the length. There are measurements that give different sizes of the cigars. The factories actually have a name for them different than what the brands come out with, and that lets them know what size cigar they're making. So that Monte Cristo mild cigar, that open line has been around for, I think, about 7 years now, maybe only 5. Line's been around for a while, and they come in different sizes. The Eagle, the Regatta, there's another one I'm not thinking of. They're all about the same in flavor, but the different length in the cigar and girth is going to give you a different flavor and smoking experience. So that's my divergence for the day. Let's get back to recovery and celebrating Anita and Tim's birthdays. While you may have come to share a stick, I hope you stay for the steps. Woo!
There you go.
Almost missed it.
Thank you, Richard. All righty. So as I said, today we're on step 5. I'm going to get step 5 up here. I'll start the reading. I'll say pass, and then anybody who wants to jump in is more than welcome to. Step 5, admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. All of AA's 12 steps ask us to go contrary to our natural desires. They all deflate our egos. When it comes to ego deflation, few steps are harder to take than 5, but scarcely any step is more necessary to long-time sobriety and peace of mind than this one. AA experience has taught us we cannot live alone with our pressing problems and the character defects which cause or aggravate them. If we have swept the searchlight of step 4 back and forth over our careers, and it has revealed in stark relief those experiences we'd rather not remember, if we have come to know how wrong thinking and action have hurt us and others, then the need to quit living by ourselves and with those tormenting ghosts of yesterday gets more urgent than ever. We have to talk to somebody about them. So intense, though, is our fear and reluctance to do this that many AAs at first try to bypass step 5. We search for an easier way, which usually consists of the general and fairly painless admission that when drinking, we were sometimes bad actors. Then, for good measure, we add dramatic descriptions of that part of our drinking behavior, which our friends probably know about anyhow. But of the things which really bother and burn us, we say nothing. Certain distressing or humiliating memories we tell ourselves ought not be shared with anyone. These will remain our secret. Not a soul must ever know. We hope they'll go to the grave with us. Yet, if AA's experience means anything at all, this is not only unwise, but is actually a perilous resolve. Few muddled attitudes have caused us more trouble than holding back on step 5. Some people are unable to stay sober at all. Others will relapse periodically until they really clean house. Even AA old-timers sober for years often pay dearly for skimping this step. They will tell how they tried to carry the load alone, how much they suffered of irritability, anxiety, remorse, and depression, and how, unconsciously seeking relief, they would sometimes accuse even their best friends of the very character defects they themselves were trying to conceal. They always discovered that relief never came by confessing the sins of other people. Everybody had to confess his own. This practice of admitting one's defeat to another person is, of course, very ancient. It has been validated in every century, and it characterizes the lives of all spiritually centered and truly religious people. But today, religion is by no means the sole advocate of the saving principle. Psychiatrists and psychologists point out the deep need every human being has for practical insight and knowledge of his own personality flaws and for a discussion of them with an understanding and trustworthy person. So far as alcoholics are concerned, AA would go even further. Most of us would declare that without a fearless admission of our defects to another human being, we could not stay sober. It seems plain that the grace of God will not enter to expel our destructive obsessions until we are willing to try this. Pass.
What are we likely to receive from step 5? For one thing, we shall get rid of that terrible sense of isolation we've always had. Almost without exception, alcoholics are tortured by loneliness. Even before our drinking got bad and people began to cut us off, nearly all of us suffered that feeling that we didn't quite belong. Either we were shy or dared not to draw near to others, or we were apt to be noisy goodfellows, craving attention and companionship, but never getting it, at least to our way of thinking. There was always that mysterious barrier we could neither surmount nor understand. It was as if we were actors on a stage, suddenly realizing that we did not know a single line of our parts. That's one reason we loved alcohol too well. It did let us act extemporaneously, but even Bacchus boomeranged on us. We were finally struck down and left in terrified loneliness. When we reached AA and for the first time in our lives stood among people who seemed to understand, the sense of belonging was tremendously exciting. We thought the isolation problem had been solved. But we soon discovered that while we weren't alone anymore in a social sense, we still suffered many of the old pangs of anxious apartness. Until we had talked with complete candor of our conflicts and had listened to someone else to do the same thing, we still didn't belong. Step 5 was the answer. It was the beginning of the true kinship with man and God. The vital step was also the means by which we began to get the feeling that we could be forgiven, no matter what we had thought or done. Often it was while working on this step with our sponsors or spiritual advisors that we first felt truly able to forgive others, no matter how deeply we felt they had wronged us. Our moral inventory had persuaded us that all-round forgiveness was desirable, but it was only when we resolutely tackled step 5 that we inwardly knew we'd be able to receive forgiveness and give it too. Another great dividend we may expect from confiding our defects to another human being is humility, a word often misunderstood. To those who have made progress in AA, it amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. Therefore, our first practical move toward humility must consist of recognizing our deficiencies. No defect can be corrected unless we clearly see what it is, but we shall have to do more than see. The objective look at ourselves we achieved in step 4 was, after all, only a look. All of us saw, for example, that we lacked honesty and tolerance, that we were beset at times by attacks of self pity or delusions of personal grandeur. But while this was a humiliating experience, it didn't necessarily mean that we had yet acquired much actual humility. Though now recognized, our defects were still there. Something had to be done about them, and we soon found that we could not wish or will them away by ourselves. Pass.
More realism, and therefore, my name is Simeon. I'm an alcoholic. More real. Try that again. More realism and therefore more honesty about ourselves are the great gains we make under the influence of step 5. As we took inventory, we began to suspect how much trouble self-delusion had been causing us. This had brought a disturbing reflection. If all our lives we had more or less fooled ourselves, how could we now be so sure that we weren't still self-deceived? Pardon me. How could we now did that before? How could we be certain that we had made a true catalog of our defects and had really admitted them even to ourselves? Because we were still bothered by fear, self-pity, and hurt feelings, it was probable we couldn't appraise ourselves fairly at all. Too much guilt and remorse might cause us to dramatize and exaggerate our shortcomings. Or anger and hurt pride might be the smokescreen under which we were hiding some of our defects while we blamed others for them. Possibly, too, we were still handicapped by many liabilities, great and small, we never knew we had. Hence, it was most evident that a solitary self-appraisal and the admission of our defects based upon that alone wouldn't be nearly enough. We have to have outside help if we were surely to know and admit the truth about ourselves, the help of God and another human being. Only by discussing ourselves, holding back nothing, only by being willing to take advice and accept direction could we set foot on the road to straight thinking, solid honesty, and genuine humility.
Yet many of us still hung back. We said, why can't God, as we understand him, tell us where we are astray? If the creator gave us our lives in the first place, then he must know in every detail where we have since gone wrong. Why didn't we make our admissions to him directly? Why do we need to bring anyone else into this? At this stage, the difficulties of trying to deal rightly with God by ourselves are twofold. Though we may at first be startled to realize that God knows all about us, we are apt to get used to that quite quickly. Somehow being alone with God doesn't seem as embarrassing as facing up to another person. Until I actually sit down and talk aloud about what we have so long hidden, our willingness to clean house is largely theoretical. When we are honest with another person, it confirms that we have been honest with ourselves and with God. The second difficulty is this: what comes to us alone may be garbled by our own rationalization and wishful thinking. The benefit of talking to another person is that we can get his direct comment and counsel on our situation. And there can be no doubt in our minds what the advice is. Going it alone in spiritual matter is dangerous. How many times have we heard well-intentioned people claim the guidance of God when it was too plain that they were sorely mistaken? Lacking both practice and humility, they have deluded themselves and were just able to justify the most arrant nonsense on the ground that it was that this was what God had told them. It was worth noting that people of very high spiritual development almost always insist on checking with friends or spiritual advisors the guidance they feel they have received from God. Surely then a novice ought not lay himself open to the chance of making foolish, perhaps tragic blunders in this fashion. While a comment or advice by others may be by no means infallible, it is likely to be far more specific than direct guidance we may receive while we are still so inexperienced in establishing contact with a power greater than ourselves. Our next problem will be to discover the person in whom we are to confide, who we ought to take much care. Remember the prudence of a virtue which carries a high rating. Perhaps we shall need to share with this person facts about ourselves with no other ought to know. We shall want to speak with someone who is experienced, who not only has strayed dry, but has been able to surmount other serious difficulties perhaps like our own. This person may turn out to be one's sponsor, but not necessarily so. If you have developed a high confidence in him and his temperament and problems are close to your own, then such a choice will be good. Besides, your sponsor already has the advantage of knowing something about your case. Pass.
Perhaps, though, the relation to him is such that you would care to reveal only a part of your story. If this is the situation, by all means do so, for you ought to make the beginning as soon as you can. It may turn out, however, that you'll choose someone else for the more difficult and deeper revelations. This individual may be entirely outside of AA, for example, your clergyman or your doctor. But for some of us, a complete stranger may prove the best bet. The real tests of the situation are your own willingness to confide and your full confidence in the one with whom you share your first accurate self-survey. Even when you found the person, it frequently takes great resolution to approach him or her. No one ought to say the AA program requires no willpower. Here's one place you may require all you've got. Happily, though, the chances are that you will be in for a very pleasant surprise when your mission is carefully explained and it is seen by the recipient of your confidence how helpful he can really be. The conversation will start easily and will soon become eager. Before long, your listener may well tell a story or two about himself, which will place you even more at ease. Provided you hold back nothing, your sense of relief will mount from minute to minute. The dammed up emotions of years break out of their confinement and miraculously vanish as soon as they are exposed. As the pain subsides, a healing tranquility takes place, and when humility and serenity are combined, something else of great moment is apt to occur. Many in AA, once agnostic or atheist, tells that it was during this stage of step 5 they first actually felt the presence of God. And even those who had faith already often become conscious of God as they never were before. This feeling of being at one with God and man, this emerging from isolation through the open and honest sharing of our terrible burden of guilt, brings us to a resting place where we may prepare ourselves for the following steps toward a full and meaningful sobriety.
Thank you to all the folks who volunteered and jumped in and read for us today. So my name is Brian. I'm an alcoholic. Today we're obviously on step 5. As I've said many times before, the sponsor that I was lucky enough to get to work the steps, traditions, and concepts of service suggested to me that I go out and buy a dictionary before I started working them. I didn't really know why. I thought the 12 and 12 was sufficient. But he said, it's just a suggestion, which I took, and went out and bought that dictionary, because back then you couldn't Google the definitions of things, on a computer. And before working any step, tradition, or concept of service, he required me to write down that step, tradition, or concept of service and look up the definition for each one of those words, so that I could then rewrite the step, tradition, or concept of service in an alternative form to help me get a better understanding of the words that I'm reading. And so when I look at admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs, and then rewrite it in an alternative form, I come up with, I confess to be true that in the direction of the spirit of having power, which is not mine, over human fortunes, I then head in the direction of personally, jointly, of the person of the same type, such as a sponsor, the essence of a person that is going to help define and point forward to me the precise basic features that are needed in the relationship between and belonging to me or associated with me when it comes to my actions or immoral actions, dishonesty, or unjust. I don't know what it does for you, but I know what it did for me. And it just, it was just, one other way of me trying to get a better understanding of exactly what step 5 is supposed to be for me. Now, it's been my experience that it is not enough to simply just write inventory. When I write inventory, I need to also read it to a spiritually understanding person. For the inventory that I'm writing has to be transformed from guilt to experience, and from weakness to strength, and from fear to hope. And if I don't report to somebody or someone on my shortcomings, I then become God in my own life, as I did when I drank. And that is the exact nature of my wrongs. I thought I was God. I thought I was in charge. Now, there was a purpose to my drinking, and there was a reason I drank alcoholically. And it was through the 5th step that I began to understand the lessons I had to learn before I became a candidate for sobriety. Through a 5th step, I finally understood the reality of my life when I was drinking. What I used to be like is not described in a drunkalog. It is described best in the reasons for my spiritual disobedience that led to my alcoholism. Now, the first lesson I had to learn from my drinking was that willpower was not always the answer to stopping drinking. If you had told me then that surrender was the answer, I would have said, I don't know what you're talking about. And I learned this lesson the only way I could, by defeat through drinking. And this is the first reason I am grateful for the years of my alcoholic drinking. Because, see, God let me learn this lesson without killing myself or others. And the second lesson I had to learn before I could realize it was a privilege to walk through the door of an AA meeting was that my intellect could not control my alcoholic drinking. After I gave up trying to stop drinking through willpower, I tried to control my drinking through my intelligence and the minds of the best shrinks I could hire. See, the idea that somehow I will be able to control and enjoy my drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. And whenever I controlled my drinking, I never enjoyed it. And I only enjoyed it when I didn't control it. Now, if you had told me that intuitive thinking after having had a spiritual awakening was the answer and not my intelligence, I again would have said that I don't know what you were talking about. But I learned this lesson the only way I could, again, in defeat through drinking. And this is the second reason I am grateful for my years of alcoholic drinkings, because God let me learn this lesson, again, without harming others or myself. And the final lesson that I had to learn before I could become sober was to seek my sobriety from a higher power, rather than happiness based on relationships with the opposite sex. Because you see, probably no human power could have relieved my alcoholism, and that God could and would if he were sought. See, I'd become obsessed with the idea that if I had the right relationship with a woman, I would not want to drink alcoholically. And through my alcoholism, I had lost the ability to love and was in the basement of my disease, pursuing the insatiable satisfaction of my lust. Now, if you had told me that no human power could relieve my alcoholism, but only a higher power could rescue me, I would have said, again, I don't know what you're talking about. But I learned this lesson the only way I could, in defeat through drinking. I had gone through all the human relationships I could: family, friends, girlfriends, shrinks, teachers. There was no one left. Finally, at the end of my last drunk, I made a plea to God that I wasn't sure was there. I asked for sobriety, and a miracle happened. I didn't have another drink. I walked away from the middle of a drink without finishing it. Now, that was something I had never done before. I mean, I may have blacked out or passed out from drinking, but, when I woke up, I just knew that I had the rest of that drink left. But by allowing me to just walk away from that drink, God was letting me know he was surely there. And this experience has led me to my definition of a bottom. See, it doesn't matter whether we come from Skid Row or PhD studies. The bottom is at the place where I am even willing to ask a higher power that I don't even really believe in to rescue me. And this is the third lesson I am grateful for my 10 years of alcoholic drinking. God let me learn this lesson while preserving my life and guarding the lives of others from the damage my drinking could inflict. So my fifth step taught me the purpose of my drinking: to give up my reliance on my willpower, my intelligence, and on others in place of a reliance on a power greater than myself. I had discovered the exact nature of my wrongs. I thought I was in charge. I thought I was God in my own life. And I came to these discoveries with the help and guidance of a loving sponsor. It is important to read your inventory to someone who is spiritually tuned into you, but not someone who is emotionally involved with you. One of the advantages of a written 4-step is that we have something to read to someone else in a 5th step. Now, I believe there are 2 reasons why we have a sponsor. When we are honest with another person, it confirms that we have been honest with ourselves and with God. And when it comes to us alone, and what comes to us alone may be garbled by our own rationalization and wishful thinking. And my relationship with my sponsor reinforces spiritual principles in my life. Every time I read an inventory, I receive the 3 blessings that are promised in the 5th step of the 12 and 12. An end to loneliness and a sense of belonging to AA, a feeling that I could be forgiven and that I am able to forgive others, and a desire for true humility, a clear recognition of what and who I really am, followed by a sincere attempt to become what I could be. The 5th step suggests to me that I surrender any feelings of pride by being willing to read my 4-step or 10-step inventories to my sponsor or a spiritually understanding person. And that for me is basically in a nutshell, my story on step 5. I have some other homework, as to, reasons why I believe that a 5th step inventory should be read to others. I'm more than happy to share that stuff with you guys, but I don't want to take up any more time during the meeting for people to share. The meeting is now open for sharing. If you would like to share on the 5th step or anything else, all you have to do is unmute yourself and start talking.
I can go. My name's Tim. I am an alcoholic. Grateful for step 5. When it took me a long time to do my step 4, my first step 4. So when I got done, I was ready to do my step 5, and I did my step 5 with my sponsor. And my sponsor's an old timer. He's an old guy, and I went to his house. I was a little nervous, and he just sat there the whole time, didn't say a word. And I just rattled off my stuff. And afterwards, he prayed in the beginning and he prayed at the end, and then he sent me on my merry way with some homework, and that was good for me. And when Brian was talking, there's definitely a God moment, because for the first time I was able to just spill my guts, right, and just reveal not everything, but everything that I had worked on at that point. And so I went home and I did what he told me to do. I've done other step 5s. The second one I did, I went to a Franciscan monk, and just thought I'd give that a shot and see what that was all about. And he was a little bit more interactive with me. He asked lots of questions, and you know what? That was really good as well. But again, it's just another opportunity to reveal my deep, dark secrets. And on that second step, 4th step, I went a little deeper, and a little bit more garbage came out. And I'm grateful, because it just cleans house, right? And that's what this program is all about, is just cleaning house. And after you clean house, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I feel a little bit closer to people in the group and the people that I share with. So grateful to be here. And thanks again, Brian.
Thanks, Tim, and happy birthday. Who would like to go next?
I'm Dorothy. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Dorothy.
I think it's kind of funny, because as I don't know, the things that in early recovery that I took so seriously, like I had to really protect all these secrets and all this junk that I carried around with me for so long. And then, as we were reading, or actually when you said, I'm running around in life thinking I am God, I had that same kind of mentality. I was invincible, but then I kept drinking, and I kept blaming and kept being the victim. And then that one part that I had read, that part in the book where it says, I used to hear in meetings, from people, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I know God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. And it used to really bother me when people would say that, because it would be like, did he just come down and have private conversation with you? If he's around, come visit me so I can ask questions, and he can whisper in my ear. And that part that I read in there, it's kind of to the same thing of the spiritual advisors. We're sure that God, and in the book it says we are sure. The key word was we are sure that God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. And then with the spiritual advisors, having, I don't know. I was raised Russian Orthodox, and we didn't get to read the Bible or anything like that. We always had the priest talking down to us, and you're gonna go to hell. And I just think back at how back then how serious I was, because I knew I just didn't want to drink. I knew I wanted to be rid of the alcohol. And then I would always hear in 12 and 12 in Big Book Study, there was this one redheaded witch who used to always say, secrets get you drunk. I mean, it was like every time she would say that, it would just like, I'd wake up again. And it would be like, oh my God, God really wants me to hear this. So when it came time to do my first 4-step, it was like I laid it all out there. And the lady I asked to be my sponsor, I watched and I observed and I watched how she interacted with other people and how she would interact with other people. It wasn't the old timers that she would go and have conversation with. She would go and introduce herself to the newcomer and just introduce, and if you ever need, just introducing to the newcomer, not going and having busybody conversations, because I didn't trust people anyway. And I sure as heck didn't want them to know my business. So I asked her if she'd be my sponsor. And kind of like Tim, she just sat there. That's all she did. And, after we were all done is when she started pulling out even more, so if this and then that, what happened with this. But she shared a lot of her own story before we even got to step 5, which even made it even better on the level of trust. And then throughout the years, I've been able to work the steps with other people. I would go to meetings and I would listen to people, and I really struggled with step 3. And I knew that I struggled with step 3. I was fully aware that I did. But I would go into the meetings and I kept hearing this guy, he would always talk about the step 3 thing. So I finally asked him, I said, would you be willing to work the steps with me? And he gave me different perspective on things. And then there was this lady, because I had really bad shame, guilt, and remorse about, my behavior. I kept beating me up. I kept beating myself up. And so I heard this old lady, Carol, sharing her story all the time. And she would talk about her children and how she was able to get through that shame, guilt, and remorse. So I go and ask Carol, would you be willing to work the steps with me? So it was like I would listen in meetings. I knew where I struggled. And if I heard someone talking, I would go up and just ask them if they would work the steps with me. And I did, or they did. And I remember sitting there with Carol on my 5th step. And, she mean old woman, like oil rig woman back in the day, come up here to Alaska working on the oil rigs. And she's sitting there in a rocker chair, and I'm going on. I'm just sobbing because I have all this shame, guilt, and remorse about my kids. And she just finally, I think I got her to her boiling point, because she just told me basically to shut the F up. Just shut the F up. But see, at the time I was so serious about it. But then when I look back at those kinds of things, I start laughing. And I think it's just absolutely hilarious, how my thinking was. But it's like, I truly believe each and every, time I've gone through the steps and actually written out the 4th step, it just became to where, that first one was just lay it all out there. The other times were just things that I was peeling back, and I could hear in other people what they had, and that's what I wanted. I didn't want nothing to be in the way of, me holding on to anything about drinking. And then that part in there where it talks about, having confession and going to church, being Russian Orthodox. If my mom wanted me to have communion, then I had to go and have confession. And like it, don't trust them. They're nasty people. So I'm so thankful that, spirituality is God-given and religion is man-made, and I have nothing to do with it. So thank you.
Thanks, Dorothy.
I'm Madison. I'm an alcoholic.
Madison.
Thanks for letting me join you today. All of my favorite speakers are from California, so I looked up online some AA meetings in California, and I really needed one now, so it was cool that you guys started at 12:12. This might be a jumbled mess because it's been quite a few months since I've been to an AA meeting. Probably close to 6 months or so. I have 9 years of sobriety, and when I first got into the program, I met a sponsor just because the treatment center required that I get a sponsor so I could get my cell phone back, and I really wanted my cell phone back. So I just randomly asked this lady at an AA meeting, and she was in a business suit and looked all professional, and I was a multiple felon at that time and had no keys. I was in a halfway house, and I just thought we would have nothing in common. And it turns out God knew what I needed before, definitely more than I did at the time. And so I met with her, and I ended up making a few choices in early sobriety that led me to really trust, ended up being committed to doing what I needed to do because I didn't want to be in that situation one more time so I got pregnant in this halfway house. And my sponsor had told me, what are you doing? What if you get pregnant? And I said, oh, I'm not going to get pregnant. And then I did. And so it was that situation one more time where I didn't have a job. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a license. I didn't have a place to live. And all of a sudden I had this little baby that I was going to have to take care of. And I just put myself in that position one more time where the world was falling down around me. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I decided I was going to do everything that woman told me from that point on. And I did. And she never lied to me, and my life got better. And, I got my license back, and I got a job, and I ended up buying a house, and I got married, and I have another little boy now. And neither of my 2 kids have ever seen me drink or use. But recently I've struggled a little bit with AA, and my sponsor ended up such a crier. My sponsor ended up leaving the program, kind of doing more self-help stuff and therapy and things like that, and built a huge business and is super successful and super busy. And it's been hard. I've reached out to other sponsors, and I've tried to kind of do this AA thing, and I just haven't. It's so hard for me to trust other people. I feel like I have these huge walls up. And I go into work, and it's like in my mind, and these are these character defects that I'm writing down as we're going through this, but I go into work, and it's like, my boss hates me. He's for sure going to fire me tomorrow. I come home, I'm like, my husband's going to divorce me. He's not really in it. I'm a terrible wife. It's just this like thing that rolls through my head, which I realize is my alcoholism. And I don't know, for some reason, I don't want to rely on AA. I want to be able to manage my life, and sounds so crazy. I just want to be normal, and for so long I was so grateful for AA and all the miracles that it had done in my life. And I was like in this place where I was giving it up, and I was giving up the fear to God, and I was trusting that everything, even the difficult stuff, because my brother was murdered when I was in early sobriety. And, I went through really tough things, but I could realize and see that everything happens for a reason. And if I do the next right thing and I walk through it, and I, focus on my part and my side of the street, that 5th step, and focus on doing better with my character defects, I put me back together, and the whole world falls into place, and good things happen, and God comes through. And I think I've lost that somewhere along the way. And I knew this was going to be a mess, but I just have to come here and be completely honest, because I feel like I'm struggling with connecting in AA, and I'm struggling with the pandemic and feeling isolated. And anyways, the crazy thinking in my head obviously tells me that I need to be here, and I need to share this stuff, because otherwise it just stays bottled up. But I don't want to feel alone anymore. So I'm here, and I'm grateful for you guys hearing me out. And with that, I pass.
I'm Stacy. I'm an alcoholic. Brian, thank you. And thank you for your share. Usually I don't always like to share, but the fifth step for me, it's so funny, and I think Madison, you touched on it. It's like next week I'm going to have 15 years, which is like hard to believe. And, when you were sharing, it just reminded me of like, even with my family now, there's some type of underlying, maybe the way I grew up, shame, because I'm the only real alcoholic that's like helped people, or in my career, like, even though I don't mind sharing it and I know that that's the right thing and everybody knows it, I haven't made it a secret. But sometimes I feel the shame of it because when I wasn't coming to AA as much and I was kind of, a little bit turned off. And I think in the pandemic, actually, and having meetings like this, it's rejuvenated that for me of wanting to, be in AA again. I think it goes in waves. And, even, talking to some of my friends, there's a lot of times, a lot of people don't share this, but there's a lot of times like, I just want to be normal again, right? My friends go out, they drink, they party, they do whatever. And that's cool, and I am happy for them and I'm okay with it. But sometimes, you'd like to do that too. But I realize that like, I've crossed that line regardless of whether I think I'd be able to handle it. I talk myself into being able to handle it. The bottom line is, why change that? Because the fact is, I probably would never come back here again. I would never go through what I had to go through in that humiliation, and it talked about humble. And I remember always hearing humble when I was new, and my dog is taking every toy. Anyway, sorry about that. It's, I used to hate that word, but now I realize what an important word humility is, because when you have that, I used to think it was insulting, but it's really just such a gift, right? And, we're talking about the fifth step, and the way that I did it was I just, in the fourth, it's like, I just started writing down every single person I ever knew. Not that I had a resentment or anything, just like from my childhood up, like, who do you know? And then you could just go through it because you got to start somewhere. It's like, it feels overwhelming. And what I say to my sponsees is like, it's just like my pantry over here, there's things that now, and I do it myself. It's like, there's things that are expired. I don't know why the fuck I bought that. I don't, whatever the food is, it's spoiled. I don't like it anymore. I'm sick of it, whatever. It doesn't work for me anymore. Or I'm on a health kick or I'm not. And why was I buying Pop-Tarts? Of course, I feel like shit. It's cleaning out like a pantry and putting back things, taking out things that don't work, that are expired, they're old, they're no longer where I'm at, right? And putting back things or trying new things that I think are going to work in my life now. And if I just look at it like that, I don't get overwhelmed with what I have to tell someone. Because I remember reading my first, my fourth step, or, doing my fifth step. And I would read so fast with things that I was like embarrassed about, like so fast that my sponsor was like, wait, go back, like I didn't hear you. But that's because I was embarrassed, but I was willing, it's just the willingness. And, I guess that's the thing, is like, what I've learned in here is I always do contrary action, because my first reaction is no. I wake up sometimes and I'm like, no, I don't want to. It doesn't matter what I want to. When I make myself do it, showing up is like 85% of everything. The rest, sometimes I can act better, sometimes I can't. Sometimes, we get bottles everywhere, but I'm just grateful that you keep this going, and that I'm sort of back in the book, because there's things that I need to hear that I haven't heard in a long time. So I appreciate everyone in this meeting, and I'll put my number in there too if anyone wants a call.
Thanks, Stacy. Go ahead, Cynthia. I see your hand up.
alcoholic named Cynthia. I just wanted to thank Dorothy. I caught the very end. You had like the sunlight of the spirit was glowing all over you. When I came in the room, I usually am working this time of the day, and I got off early and I rushed home, and what is it? It's 4 o'clock my time, so it's 3 o'clock y'all's time or whatever. So I jumped in, caught the end of the meeting. But I might have needed to catch this meeting because Madison, I thought she said she was in her 9th year. I could be wrong. But my 9th year was my growth spurt. I'm soon to pick up a 10-year chip, and I will gracefully walk into my 11th year. I wanted to quit AA. I would call my sponsor and be like, I'm going to stay sober, but I just want to quit AA. I'm like sick of all the bullshit. And this was before Zoom. Now, I mean, the end of it was Zoom because it was like February, March, and then I picked up my 9-year chip, and now I've been working on my 10-year chip all year. This has been a challenging year for me. There's been several days where I just kind of want to say, I've been doing this pretty much on my own. I don't really go to meetings now. I've been doing some outside meetings because everybody's getting the shot and stuff, with healthy distance and healthy socialism. But it doesn't seem like the meetings are the same with a mask on. And Zoom has became my AA, which I never thought would even happen. But it allows me to go to California. I thought I was in Chicago, but I guess I'm in California. I don't even know where I'm at. I just know I'm in a room with a bunch of drunks, and Madison shared where I was last year, last month, 5 months ago, randomly throughout my sobriety. I just want to quit AA because it's working. It's working. And when something's working for me and it's doing good for me, my natural instinct is to fuck it up. Excuse my language. To mess it up. I want to mess up what my spirit of the universe has fixed up. And so I do what I don't want to do to get the results I need to get. I stay comfortable. I stay comfortable with being uncomfortable, and I get to grow. My experience is when I'm feeling that way, I'm going through growth spurts. So I'm very proud. You look a lot younger than me to get this earlier than I did, because I threw away 38 years to king alcohol, and that motor scooter does not own my life today. That's all I got. Thanks again, Dorothy.
Talking to myself. Thank you, Cynthia. Anybody else like to share?
My Ernest alcoholic.
Hi, Ernest.
I apologize. You guys had a time change this past weekend. I'm an hour late, so I'm going to have to watch it on recording, but it sounded like it was a great meeting. So just my apologies for being late, and I'll look forward to seeing the recording.
Thanks, Ernest. Anybody else?
Hey, Brian, my name's Nita, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi.
And, as I was listening to everyone speak, one of the things that, I'm going to say this, that in the book where you were reading, it spoke to, damn it, I just lost the page. It says, no defect can be corrected unless we clearly see what it is. And, what I've done a couple of 4-steps. My first one was very fleeting and very surface, and it worked for what it was supposed to do, to catapult me into another position. I was listening to Madison, and she was talking about wanting to live like normal people. I'm the alcoholic that got here, and today I know it's not in the book, but when I read the book, what I read was, you will get to go live like normal people. I read that. And hence, I began to, hold on one second. No, I don't. Can you see I'm talking on a meeting? I'll get with you in a minute. Sorry, y'all, it's my 19-year-old. Anyway, damn it, always does. It makes me forget my train of thought. I thought that I could actually go live like, and I proceeded to do that. I didn't drink, but I was crazy as a Betsy bug. Because what began to resurface was those making demands upon people, making these requests. And then what consequently began to happen, I fell back into those moments of self-pity, you know, of the delusions, like, oh, I'm really not that bad. Oh, I'm super great. You know, it was just like this back and forth pendulum that just kind of went flipped. And if at some point I thought maybe I'm manic, maybe I need some medication. I made up all of these reasons and excuses to not look at myself. And in the moment that recently, year and a half or so ago, I had to get a new sponsor and I had to do the work. And I say that because I was thinking about the loneliness. You know, I never thought that I was lonely. I just thought I really didn't do people very well. I thought I had a problem that, you know, it was people. And a good friend of mine, we were at a convention. And if you know the big foyer areas in a hotel, I was standing there, and I'm over 15 years sober at the time, and the guy watched me, and the story that he related, because I'm standing there and there were people everywhere and all about me, a place where it's supposed to be a lot of fun and all these activities. And eventually what happened, I walked myself backward into a wall. My anxieties kicked up. And those ideas that I initially thought was, I just don't do people really well. I'm really not lonely. What I began to understand, because I can only be aware of something when I'm aware of it. I don't always know the defects. I don't always know what they are until sometimes they show up in these insidious ways where I've masked and believed them to look like something else. And what I found out is that fear of people, that anxiety that I suffered from, it took me to a place where maybe I am really lonely, but I like lonely, but my fear wouldn't, you know, it's just this array of crazy, that lack of soundness of mind, you know. And when I continued to do some things, like I said, I got with another sponsor and I did some additional work, because there's a part in me. I'm a mom. I got this kid. I got two kids, but when I look back with my first child, she's 32. When I look back, I was ashamed to have to admit to a person, I didn't want no kids. I didn't want to be a parent. I don't want to do the things that are required to do with these people, you know. And as I've stayed sober, I've learned how to find the joy. When I took ownership of my flaws, the defects, because see, what I understand today, the defects get to be corrected. I've never operated in my normal God-given instinct. I've always operated in this warped place, the bubble in the floor. I just walk over the bubble, and more often than not, I trip. You know, and those are the things that put me back in that place of more work is necessary. And in 5, that ability, and what Brian said was just, I loved it. You said, it's a matter of being spiritually connected into, as opposed to being emotionally into. See, I want to find that warm and fuzzy. You know, I want to find that person who's gonna, you know, we just gonna love you till you can love yourself. You know, all that old mushy. Whereas I needed somebody that.
I think your 19-year-old got a hold of you, Anita.
Man, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Right.
That's
I
a
said I
terrible
needed to talk to you.
Unplug the internet.
Yep.
All righty. Well, let's see if she makes it back here. Oh, yeah.
I don't know what just happened.
Your 19-year-old unplugged you. That's what happened.
Oh, geez. Oh my, he probably did. He's been screaming at a video game all morning. but at any rate, thank you so much for allowing me to share.
Thanks, Anita.
Happy birthday, Anita.
Anybody else got a burning desire before we wrap it up? Once, going twice. Okay. Well, thank you all. As I always like to say, I want to thank each and every one of you for paying a 12-step call on me today. I want to thank Anita for reading the How It Works, Dorothy for the 12 Traditions, and Tim for the Daily Reflections. I would like to congratulate our birthday celebrants today. Tim for 13 years. Woo! And Anita for 23 years. Woo! And I especially want to thank Madison for coming to join us today and sharing with us her vulnerability. You know, it certainly is something that I needed to hear. And I put in the chat a meeting that, you know, you may want to attend. It's a great group of people, and it's every night of the week. We're also here on Fridays as a speaker meeting at the same time. And I invite you to stick around after the meeting, maybe talk with some of the ladies here. You know, after a moment of silence. Oh, and I want to thank my cigar aficionado, Richard S., for sharing with us his experience, strength, and smoke today.
Thanks, Brian. Grateful to be here.
And after a moment of silence for the alcoholic who's still suffering both inside and outside these rooms, I invite you to join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Hallowed be thy name.
Thy kingdom
Thy
come,
kingdom come,
thy will be
thy will be done
on earth
on earth
as
as
it
it
is
is
in
in
heaven.
heaven.
Give us this
Give
day
us our day.
Our bread, forgive us our trespasses, as we
those
forgive
who
those
trespass against us.
And lead
Lead
us
us
not
not
into
into temptation,
temptation,
but
but
deliver
deliver
us
us
from
from
evil.
evil.
For
For
thine
thine
is
is
the
the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Coming back, it works